What's poppin', people? It's Dante. Welcome to the Centennial Arboretum. Looks like the leaves are changing colors and falling. It is a beautiful autumn day here in Philadelphia. Okay, so the thought is about photography and how to find inspiration in the realm of photography generally, right? We have photo books, we have galleries, we have zines, we have all these things that people produce to look at. And so my thought is, if you're interested in learning from photo books, if you're interested in studying the history of photography, to find the frames within these books that resonate with you deeply. And I think that when you analyze a frame, you should look at the frame and decide what it is that you like about the picture. Do you enjoy the composition? Do you enjoy the subject? Are you interested in the use of light and shadow? What is it about the photograph that resonates with you? And pull together a couple different photographers that you admire from the history of photography, preferably photography that's been done, I would suggest anywhere from 30 to 40, 50 years ago. Like, I think it's better to look at work that's been done a little bit more, you know, in the past than recent work. And the reason for that is that you can sort of look at these bodies of work as finalized pieces that aren't in flux, that aren't fresh, that aren't new. And I think these kind of works, like, for instance, Koudelka's Exiles. I have a book by Larry Tao, The Mennonites. There's lots of different works from Alex Webb, like La Calle of the Street from Mexico, 30 years of photographs. There's a lot of different photographers that have inspired me over the years, from Todd Papageorge, Passing Through Eden, photographs from Central Park. And I think when you look at the frames and something resonates with you, if it's a photograph by somebody that you admire, like William Klein, for instance, is a photographer that first inspired me to hit the streets. I remember when I saw the movie, it was The Many Lives of William Klein, a documentary that was on YouTube that is no longer available. I don't know where to find it. And I remember watching this and looking at his photographs, and the gritty, raw approach to the streets of Klein has really inspired me. And the way in his, you know, his like attitude, right? It's like the attitude of the photographer can become something inspiring, right? The audacity of photographers like James Notchway, who photographed and documented wars throughout the world, and the breadth of work from photographers like Sebastião Salgado, who's documented miners, to, you know, different events in Africa, from gold rushes to, you know, the oil rigs, to the beautiful landscapes and vistas of nature, from the Arctic to the sort of streets. There's something about these different photographers that I admire, that I like to pull inspiration from. And I've done this initially over my journey as a photographer, and most recently picking up books from Moriyama, looking at the photographs of his. I'm finding the sort of aesthetics and the choices of these sort of punchier, high contrast images to be what I'm gravitating towards these days. I looked through the books of Ray Metzger and appreciate his use of light and shadow, finding that sort of fine line between abstraction and documentation. You know, there's something about street photography specifically that becomes a historical fact that is based upon reality, that can then be elevated to a transcendental height through the poetry, through the lyricism of the streets, and the way in which the photographer interprets the world through their lens. Meaning, a photograph is not necessarily what life is, but what it could be through your interpretation of reality. And I think that's the art of street photography. It's simultaneously depicting reality as it is, as a fact, but also a good lie through your interpretation with the lens. And I think that there is something to be said about this as photographers who've carved the path for many other photographers, like Henri Cartier-Bresson, right? Like with Bresson, you know, his interest was never to create a photograph as a photojournalist, but more so as a surrealist, somebody interested in the abstraction of reality and making photographs in the more personal approach that piqued his curiosity through making photographs with an artistic twist out there in the real world, on the streets, documenting real life. And so the candid nature of street photography, I believe, is what makes it so spicy, so tasty, so juicy when you look at a picture that's made on the streets, because it's not a painting that's deriving from a photographer's imagination, it's a depiction of reality. And so while I appreciate this idea, I remind myself of the fine line that we can draw between reality and abstraction, and how we can achieve this to improve our photography and make it a little bit more interesting. And I think that for me going forward, shooting high contrast black and white and making pictures in a much more seamless way in my process, where I essentially always carry the camera with me in my front right pocket, and I just kind of point and shoot without really thinking. And so by removing the notion of me documenting anything specific and focusing more so on the internal world of myself as a photographer, and who I am and where I am in the world and what I'm perceiving and how I feel about life, I photograph from my gut. I photograph from my instinct and my intuition. I think that's where the most beautiful photographs are born from. It's not born from the rational mind of trying to put together the order in your frame so rationally and critically, but it comes through letting go and playing more and tinkering more. And I think through that spontaneous act of making a photograph, you can create a new world. You can create something from nothing. And so with photography, I think it's very critical for you to push yourself to shoot more and think less. I think at the end of the day, we can sit and study and look at photo books and pick and choose which kind of work we resonate with, why we enjoy certain photos and don't enjoy certain photos, and take bits and pieces from all these things and create a visual palette that will inspire us. But then when you go out into the world, I think it's important to be inspired from the candid, spontaneous, raw, unfiltered nature of who you are, from the internal state of being. And so that's what's going to reflect in the photographs you make. And so in the past, I was very much a rational photographer, somebody who has order in my life. I like to wake up early and go to bed early. I like to have order in my everyday routine. I like to walk with consistency and repetition, walking the same ways. I look at life with all of its complexities, and I would photograph and travel to new places, because ever since I was a little boy, I was a very courageous boy. I would play in the forest by myself. I would carve spears and attempt to hunt deer. I would climb big trees and create teepees, and I would explore in the unknown all on my own when I was a little kid. And I had this inner adventurous spirit within me, and that inner adventurous spirit is what propelled me out onto the front lines of life in the world. And so I would immerse myself in different communities, from Baltimore to Zambia, to the streets of Israel and Palestine, to the slums of Mumbai, to the mountains of Mexico, and the tranquil lakes and marketplaces of Hanoi. All of these different places that I've traveled to derived originally from that inner childlike spirit that came out to play, that was interested in conquering and seizing the day and exploring the unknown. And I think that is what reflects in the photographs I make, through my adventurous spirit, through me being courageous and audacious. And so I think that you become in tune with yourself as you make pictures, right? You sort of discover who you are as much as you're discovering the world around you externally. And so that's the beauty of street photography. And so you become yourself through the act of creation, through evolution and change. And so through making more photographs, you will discover your voice, you will discover how you perceive and see and feel about the world around you. And so I encourage you to study photo books, to become inspired by works that's been done in the past that you deem to be impressive, or something deeply emotionally sort of resonates with you, and then go out into the world with this visual palette and this understanding of how people have made pictures in the past and how you can apply that language to your photography. But through that spontaneity and through that emotional feeling that you have about the world, and through that experience of photographing loosely and candidly and tapping into your intuition, you will come home with a composition, you will come home with the photograph, a frame that reflects your internal state. And so this is my philosophy on how we can achieve this goal of documenting and abstracting reality simultaneously in order for us to achieve something more interesting in the realm of street photography. Because what I've learned over my journey and through all of my travels and photographing, I've essentially come to the conclusion that it's extremely easy to position your physical body in relationship to a subject, the background, and understand when to press the shutter. Meaning The art of photography has nothing to do with the technicality. It's very easy to put together a frame, to arrange things in a particular way, and to create something compelling and impactful. But it's difficult to tap into your internal state and to know who you are and allow that to reflect in the photographs you make. And so I seek to make a sublime photograph, something that has an emotional resonance for a viewer. I seek to create something that is about me as much as it's about the world around me. And so that's a very difficult thing to achieve, but I think that we can all achieve this through tapping into our subconscious mind, through allowing ourselves to find our inner curiosity guide us onto the street, to return to your inner child, return to who you were as a little boy. I remember as a little boy being so fearless, going to the skate park and throwing myself down the ramp and falling down and getting back up. And I remember as a little boy being playful and exploring in the forest, exploring the unknown. And so that is the adventurous spirit that comes out when I'm on the street. And so now when I'm on the street, I tap into that inner curiosity. I tap into my inner child. I tap into that inner voice that guides me and propels me onto the street. And I allow that to carry me. And so I think as much as we can go out there and look at these books and become inspired, I think that what you are looking for after all is deriving from within. It's deriving from who you were when you were a boy. And that little boy, that little girl, whoever you were as a child, wants to come out and create and play and tinker. You know, think of a child. A child wakes up just eager for the day, eager to go to the park and play, eager to create, to tinker, to fail, to mess up and make mistakes. But through the failure and making mistakes and making more things, you start to figure out who you are. You start to create more, and through that process of creation, essentially you discover more. You discover who you are, you discover how you feel about life and the world around you, and through the act of creating more photographs, you will discover your unique perspective, your unique voice. And I think this is very important and critical, because I think as you study these photo books and as you look at these works that have been done before you, and you look for that inspiration to spark something and ignite something within you to create more, the goal is to create more, right? So stop getting caught up with these notions, I think, of style and, you know, these notions of, you know, finding your voice. I think it comes very naturally and it comes very intuitively through the act of creation. And also, if you even assume that everything's been done before, that all the photographs and stories have been told and that you can never make something unique, I say nay. You know, you cannot make the same photograph twice, for your personal interpretation of the world and the way in which you engage with life generally is different from anybody. And so we can all create and we can all make our own unique style through the act of creation. I think it derives through doing, not dwelling, not stagnation, not planning, not contriving, not making checklists and themes and thinking about a book. I think it comes through doing the work itself. And so that's a very critical message I just want to get across, because I think as you make more and you enter that flow state and you're making more pictures and you're chipping away at life, you can discover who you are. You discover not only how you see the external world, not only how you interpret reality through your camera and through your eyes, but also how you feel from an emotional state of being, from your spirit. And that spiritedness, I believe, is what we should tap into when on the street, and that's what should guide us. And that's, I believe, the purest inspiration. You know, as much as you can become inspired from the external things like books and galleries and looking at paintings and drawings and things that have been done in the realm of art, even listening to music and things of this nature, the purest form of inspiration, it comes from your inner child. The purest form of inspiration comes from within, and I think this is really critical in order to create something that is a bit more unique. And I think we all seek to achieve this goal of creating something special that is yours. And I really do recommend you, however, to find a visual palette, to find ways for you to give your eyes, give your ears, and give your sort of senses the sort of pleasure of looking at something beautiful. You know, for me, I become inspired in the park. I become inspired by all of these natural things. I like looking at trees. I like looking at leaves and all the details. And I find that these are the purest forms of creation, you know, when I look at these trees and things and look at plants and pine cones and whatever it is that I'm around in a park. I find that these sort of hikes in nature inspire me more than anything these days. You know, I hardly look at photo books or anything that's being done. And I think the problem right now with photography is we're being bombarded with images. We're being bombarded with a lot of things that are being produced massively on Instagram, specifically, where a lot of photographers live and publish work. And so my encouragement for you is to delete your Instagram account and to stop looking at the contemporaries. You know, these galleries and these different photo fairs and these different photo contests are mediocre at best. And the work that's being promoted constantly in your feed is going to give you these kind of false ideas of what is good and what is bad or what is inspiring, because when you become inspired by these different cookie cutter quick pictures that are being published, you're not going to have an understanding of what you can do and how you can make. And I think if you go to the source of these ancient sort of ideas and like the wisdom that is found through simply stripping yourself bare, going out in nature, spending time alone, you know, and discovering who you are by listening to your inner voice without the clouded sort of distraction of social media and all these things. This is the purest form of inspiration. And so I say to remove yourself from these platforms, and I think if you want to find a place for you to publish, you can simply make your own website blog. So you can use wordpress.org, bluehost.com, host your first name, last name. I personally use the Astra theme, and I publish my photos here, and I don't look at photos. I don't have much time of the day looking at photo books. I'll still collect a few. You know, I recently picked up Daido Moriyama's Quartet, which is a really special book because I get to look at 4 of his earliest works. And I think it's important to have a collection of photo books, to visit your local library, to study these things. But there does become a part of the journey that you have to sort of let go and allow yourself to turn inward in order to create your own unique body of work. And I believe that these are some of the ideas that I think we can use to influence our photography in the right direction. And I just wanted to share some of these thoughts candidly in this video today. Just came to my mind this morning, and so I figured I'd turn the GoPro Mini on and talk to you in this video about some of my ideas about inspiration, photo books, and the act of creation. I think at the end of the day, one must embrace the spirit of play, returning to the inner child, listening to your inner voice, that intuition that guides you out there into the world, onto the front lines of life. And through tapping into that inner child, you can create a new world through your camera. You can look at life and look at reality and photograph spontaneously and candidly and document a fact of what this picture is about. This is a piece of time. This is history. This is a moment. But you can abstract that through your personal interpretation and feeling about life, through tapping into your subconscious, through photographing with a raw and more unfiltered form, and not trying to plan or control anything. And so let go, embrace play, and return to your inner child. And I think that these ideas can hopefully propel us out there to create in an autotelic state, where we create simply because we love to create, despite the outcome, despite whether or not you make something good or bad, despite whether or not somebody validates you or not. And I think through that state of being, of simply producing more in a flow state and creating without any attachment to the outcome, you will thrive as an artist and create something meaningful. And through the process, you will give your life more meaning. And that's, I believe, where meaning is found. It's in the process itself. And through that process and through that change and through chipping away each day and making new things, you will find joy in your everyday life.